If you know anything about me or if we've worked together in any capacity, if you knew me as a student, I come from I'm a very fiery kind of person. And it's because I come from a very fiery kind of background. And so for me to even be here today, is through the grace of God. And so first, I just want to say thank you, God, for everything. I want to thank a couple other folks, but in order for me to go through this full story, I'm going to try to identify some key milestones in the journey, right? And so when I think about who I am today and how I got to this point, it all starts on the hilltop of Tacoma. Any hilltop folks in the building? Okay, wear that hat proudly, right? Um, when I was very little, I grew up in, late 90s. If you know the area, you know what was going on during that time. So that's a different conversation. But the love that I received from my family and my community, they always called me the professor. They always saw something in me that was outside of the community and what was going on. And I think that was a hat that I wore proudly. So it starts there. Throughout my youth, I moved practically every year. I went to Franklin Elementary, which was a beautiful school. Went to Bryant Montessori, which is a very beautiful school in terms of different ways of thinking and teaching and learning. Being in a classroom with like first, second, and third graders kind of provokes you to think a little bit differently. Moving into Sheridan Elementary, where I learned French, which was super random, but again, like really pushed me to think differently from a kid from the kind of background that I was from, which kind of transitioned into going to Stewart Middle School. Had a lot of love there, but most significantly, Lincoln High School, where I didn't start at Lincoln. I started at Wilson, and I had to convince my mom to allow me to switch to Lincoln. And it was only because of Lincoln Center that I was able to switch schools. So I want to give a very special shout out to everybody who was affiliated with Lincoln Center, specifically Mr. Brandon Irvin, who's to my left somewhere, I think, or somewhere in the building. But all the folks that really poured into Lincoln Center as kind of the foundation of where I am today. It opened the door for me to become a CSF achiever, right? It allowed me to join Upward Bound. There we go. It allowed me to gain access to Palmer Scholars. And a lot of other things where, despite all of those four programs, you would think I was like a shoe-in for college. And I have limited time, but as you can see, there was a lot that was poured into me. And it was through Lincoln and the family that I was able to build there that pushed me to go to college. I applied to probably 15, 16 different colleges and got into all of them. I got Act 6, but I ended up choosing the University of Washington so I could be extremely close to my family, which turned into me going through UW between 2014 and 2018, a very polarized time in our country. We were having a very interesting talk earlier about like this timestamp that people put on George Floyd. For me, it was Trayvon Martin. For me, it was Sandra Bland. And I was in college during all of this. And so like college campuses are probably the most polarized spaces in our country. And so as you can imagine, as a young Black man, what that kind of, or maybe you can't, but it was a real feeling. Yeah. So representation in media became extremely important to what I do. And as I graduate, I had to think about ways that I could keep that passion for storytelling and cultural representation and allowing folks to use their voice in a very accurate manner, which kind of funneled into me starting what I do now, which is creative marketing and helping folks tell their stories for their businesses, their brands, their organizations in a way that is true to who they are and what it is that they do. And so I didn't go to school for business, but I'm very, very glad that I've been able to come back to Tacoma, make a few mistakes. I've had some very blessed opportunities to try this thing out and learn as I go. So the list goes on. I'm extremely just thankful and honored to be here. And thank you all for being here.
So Deborah, how is your organization engaging with diverse stakeholders to lead and develop the development of pathways that span formal and informal education models?
Okay, that's a packed question,
Yep.
and I'm going last. So, and I'm feeling bad that I didn't go to Lincoln. So, I mean, that sounds like I went to Wilson, but I mean, thank you. Well, I think, first of all, the thing we need to do in workforce development is get to know our communities and the customers in our communities, because frankly, every community is a little different, and how they solve and resolve problems looks a little different. And we need to be good listeners. I mean, that sounds simplistic, but you know what? We missed that boat for a while. We just went straight to the problem solving mechanism, and then we're surprised when we did an assessment and it wasn't working the way we thought it should. So I think we're listening better, and we're trying to really engage that customer voice, no matter where it's coming from. I think if you're developing pathways in the formal, informal model of education, I think that is such a huge job, and I think we have to do it collectively. That has to be collective work, and I'm excited that I'm looking at our time, but I'm excited that there are things that workforce development is doing in collaboration. And the first thing I'll shout out is Collaboration for a Cause, which I think that our one-stop operations work sources that are in our communities are brilliant. We need them. But we also need to go where people are standing. We need to go to their communities throughout Pierce County. So Collaboration for a Cause is basically a mobile one-stop that allows us to go to different places in Pierce County, Puyallup, Eatonville, places where we can identify the services that people need. We talk to each community because what they need is different. So we go in with health, we go in with educators, the colleges, we go in with other community-based partners to talk about what their needs are. And, by the way, if it's like winter, we might go in with a theme, and it's about coats and, warm weather, warm clothing and things of that nature. So we're always trying to make sure we're focusing on what that community need actually is and what they need. The other thing I think that we're doing is we're looking at navigation differently. I'm very happy to say we're in partnership with all of our colleges, and TCC helping us take the lead on us facilitating an FTE to have a navigator that really speaks to beta or basic education, which gets people to the classroom. And what we discovered is people need that one-on-one interaction to talk about the challenges that they're dealing with, what they need. And because we have a short time, I'm only going to talk about 3 or 4 things that we're doing, but we're doing so many things in collective. But those are all community partners. Those are oral health and medical health. Depending on what the community has identified as a major need is what we're going to those communities to do. And that has been incredibly successful, and having an opportunity to be able to think about how we do business as a collective, how we take navigators and expand that throughout the community. So we're trying to grow that right now. We're in the middle of doing that. So that's exciting. And then Collaboration for a Cause, trying to expand what that should look like. We're always assessing and trying to figure out what do we do? How do we do this differently? What should it look like? And we're doing that via the customer voice, the business voice, the providers, the practitioners are doing the work, and trying to make sure that makes sense, and doing it different ways. So one of the things COVID taught us is that the way we used to do things, we don't need to do it that way anymore. We all know that. So we're using digital work. We're using, hybrid options so folks can figure out what their pathway should look like and how they should get started in the middle or at the end of their journey. Where should we be to help them in that role? And that is part of our obligation. I have a script because I can go on and on, so I'm trying to stay on time. So that, and I think the last thing I'll talk about is we have an internal workforce development business solutions team, and we didn't have that before. And it was really hard to track where the challenges were and solve them through 3 middlemen before we could get to the actual problem. And having an internal team really helps us narrow down what the business need is, because they're business solutions, so they focus on business. Yeah. But part of their job is to align, how do I bring the job seeker in alignment with those businesses? How do I make sure the job seekers and the providers who are serving those job seekers understand and know what the business needs? And it's also part of their job to consult with the businesses because these are changing times. And the reality is our job seekers they're telling us what it looks like for them to be in the workforce, and it looks very, very different. The businesses are asking for help in terms of what are the kind of criteria or creative things I should be doing to make sure I can retain my folks because they're leaving. They're telling me what they need, and I'm not sure how to get it done in a way that makes sense and still, make my business viable. So this business solutions team works with other workforce providers and practitioners in the community to talk about this and how do we make sure that we give viable consultation around the needs of our workforce and how they thrive. And it's very, very different. I mean, if we're going to talk about some of the things that are challenges, it is around transportation and childcare and things of that nature. So I think I'll leave it there, but